Hey, we're live. Fantastic. Hello, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube colleagues. This is Becky Carlson from Learning Pioneers. Learning Pioneers is a community committed to being the change in education and having quality professional learning experiences. And I'm here with Louise Bridge, Deputy Head from Sandringham School. So, Louise, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
Do you want to say a little bit about your role?
Yeah, absolutely. As Becky said, I'm deputy at Sandringham, and it's I've been at Sandringham nearly 20 years now, and it's one of those schools that you get into and you become part of a community, and it's very hard to go out. You don't want to leave it, and I suppose it's that thing about who am I? I'm a teacher, but I'm passionate about that opportunity to be a teacher and that idea of making a difference to the children. But at Sandringham, it's so much more than just the children. It's the families, it's our staff, it's a real community. And I feel privileged to be part of that every day, that I hope and I am making a difference to those children's lives and to those families as well, because that they know I believe in them and believe that they can be successful learners. And that's a big part of what Sandringham is about, that we want our children to go off and to be successful beyond Sandringham, and to keep in touch with us and let us know what they're up to and how they're getting on.
That's so beautiful. I mean, that's so interesting as well, because when Bimla was speaking with me a couple of weeks ago, she said you've been at Sandringham for 20 years too. So did you start about the same time as Bimla?
Yes, I had. So Bimla was actually one of my teaching assistants as she was training to teach. I had just qualified, and we were in the same reception classroom for part of a year, and then the two of us have continued our journey at Sandringham.
That's amazing. What an amazing journey you've been on. And I can see that. I mean, I mentioned this to Bimla, but I can see that at Sandringham. It's such a welcoming place for everyone. You know, when I've come in, you know, and I've come and visited several times and kind of worked with you several times, but every time I come, I just feel this welcoming. Everybody says hello, everybody's friendly. So that community has been really purposefully built. It's a lovely welcoming place for everyone. And we'll dive a bit more into kind of how you create that, because that doesn't happen by accident. That's not just by chance. That's a very intentional, purposeful thing. So, Louise.
I think we've just waiting for Becky for a little minute. Oh, Becky, you've muted there, but I can see you're on the move.
Thanks, Louise. My internet cut, so I'm just getting closer to the signal so that we don't cut again. Do you know, that's so funny, because just before we came on the call, I was just saying to Louise, there might be
yeah.
It happened at the very beginning, but we should be good. Sorry about that. So I was just going to introduce frame a little bit about what we were going to talk about, Louise, and about how we were going to look at kind of the whole school approach within Sandringham, and how that creates that culture for learning in Sandringham and within your school for every single person in Sandringham. And then that collaboration with Learning Pioneers, because you've been with us since the very beginning, really, from very close to when we started. So kind of thinking about that journey and what you do really intentionally in Sandringham, and then also kind of how Learning Pioneers has supported that. So we're going to be talking for about 15 minutes. So we'd love if you're joining us live, do join in with the comments if you're on LinkedIn. And then if you're watching back, you can comment and join in afterwards, and we'd love to hear from you. So first question for you, Louise, what made you and Sandringham first want to join Learning Pioneers, and what were your first impressions, if you can cast your mind back?
Yeah, it's back 3 years ago. And I think for me, I was just returning from maternity, my second maternity leave. And it was at a point where it had not been the maternity I was expecting because of COVID. And it was kind of just getting back into things. And Robert, the head teacher at Sandringham, he had been co-writing a book with Guy Claxton. And we had been speaking, and I was trying to get myself back into things. So I started reading the book and ended up in conversations with him about what it meant for Sandringham, reflecting back on the journey that we had come over many years, but also where were we? It felt like we never see jobs finished at Sandringham. We're always reflecting on what can we talk about polishing the pebble, and what is it we needed to do? What can we refine and reflect on? And in those conversations, Robert said to me, you know, that he was joining Learning Pioneers and invited me and asked you if I could join as well. And I think for me, starting back at that time, it was just getting that passion back again. I said, after like coming back into school, I was excited about returning, but you can feel it, it's a bit doing the same. But actually it was that idea of, you know, what's my purpose, and what's that purpose for Sandringham of where we're going. And Learning Pioneers give me that challenge, and it gave me that excitement and passion about returning. And it was a year that supported me in terms of thinking back to those when we started those masterminds. I thoroughly looked forward to coming in on, I think it was Monday mornings, possibly, when we first started. And I found those fortnightly meetings, whether it had been I'd had a challenging 2 weeks, or I'd had a really good 2 weeks, just coming in, we made sure that no matter what, that time was set aside for us, in terms of it's so important as leaders that we are also learning and that we're having that opportunity. There's so many different books I wanted to be reading, but finding time for that was can be challenging in the busy goings on of days. But actually with Pioneers and with Masterminds, I made sure that I had read what we were going to be discussing in that Monday Masterminds. And that it gave me, I suppose, an anchor to say, this is when it needs to be done by, but not in a pressurized way, but in just a purposeful way. And I felt that it really developed me as a learner. And I suppose it developed me to gain more confidence, to say, look, this is what I believe, but these are things that other people believe, and to question it and to reflect on it and think about, what does that mean for Sandringham?
Oh, there's so much there, Louise. I don't know how we're going to get this done in 15 minutes. But just to take from the very beginning of what you were saying about polishing the pebble. I mean, everything within the Masterminds and Learning Pioneers becomes reciprocal. So we all learn from and with one another. And that really stuck with me when you and Robert first kind of shared that no matter, it's craftsmanship, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
And who was I reading that was talking about teachers being craftspeople? Oh, I know. I've just been looking back on the Paul Dix and Lindsay Beth Lyons interview for behaviour empowerment at the beginning of the year. So there's clips of that coming out in Learning Pioneers over the next couple of months. And Paul Dix is talking about the crafts piece of being a teacher, the crafts piece of thinking about how to empower children through their behaviour, like that piece of being a human and being interactive with what you're doing and becoming ever better at it. And that's a real piece from Sandringham that's really powerful. You know, it's like you said, you feel like the job's never done. You're always thinking, how can we do better? How can we shape that better? And you also were speaking about, what does this mean for Sandringham, and also visioning forwards. So the inspiration, we've taken so much inspiration from you and learned so much from you in those masterminds and as part of what we're doing. But when you were sharing that you were thinking about, what might education look like in 2030? What might that look like for Sandringham? And I was like, that is such a good question. Like, you know, in terms of, that's not too far in the future. We can actually make steps towards that. So then, because of that discussion, that has become one of our inquiry lines next year with Yong Zhao and Valerie Hannon, to really think about that kind of in a bigger picture sense. So there's so much reciprocal learning in terms of learning from the way different schools approach things, and then thinking, right, well, what does that mean for us, and how can we use and build on that as well? And then it was really interesting how you were saying, like, you know, thinking back, I'd forgotten that you'd come back from maternity leave, because you just kind of go with time and then you get to another point in time. But that idea of the masterminds being a supportive place where you can kind of recalibrate, a place where you feel that connection, a place where you can align with what you really believe in. We hear that quite often, and quite often hear that from new heads and people new to role or coming back in, because they feel that it's kind of a way of kind of getting back on the rails. And then the reading piece as well, that warm accountability to self, like, I'm going to read by this point, and we're going to have a discussion, and we're going to embed that. And that's that collective efficacy piece of drip-fed content over time, and then talking about how to put it into action and putting it into action, it not just being an interesting, inspiring book. So yeah, there was loads. So the next question was, what do you love most about Learning Pioneers? Now you've been with us for a few years. What do you love about it?
I think the community, that aspect, and as I said, that's what I love about Sandringham, but that's what Learning Pioneers gives. It's a community, and it's just amazing the people that you come across, whether that's through masterminds or through looking, being on the network. And it's one of those that there can be points in my term where I can be more involved within Pioneers and like getting into the different chats and discussions. And there's points where things just get a bit busy, but I know that there's no judgment about not being part of it at that time. I know that I can get back in, but I just love the fact that even when something maybe you miss something because something comes up within school, that you can go back and look at it, and you can remind yourself of things. You can go back to the different lives, and the lives, my goodness, the speakers, Becky, that you have managed to get hold of. I was looking, just thinking about meeting with you, and I went through my notebook that from it was Adrian Bethune was the first one back in, I think, September 20, and just looking through all of those, just so inspiring, but so open to us as well, open to our questions. I think one of my highlights was when we interviewed Guy Claxton, but children from Sandringham came and asked the questions, and just his openness, to talking to our children and to answering their questions, and just so respectful of them, and all of those things, just, I suppose, they bring a smile to my face when I think back on what I've got from Pioneers.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's such a wonderful memory, isn't it? And I think that was Christmas. So Guy was wearing a Christmas hat, which also adds to the fun. but that opportunity to work so closely with those incredible lead thinkers and hold them in a place with respect and nurture. And that's why they feel like opening up. It's because they feel that sense of community and that sense of it being a psychologically safe space, which is, again, I think that conversation and that reflection came from something from Sandringham as well, just like, let's think about psychological safety. And then so we spent time really unpicking that, and that conversation continues. So as we explore, more things drop in, and then the wondering of, if we use this for a psychologically safe classroom, how do we create a psychologically safe school? How do we create a psychologically safe community? And then the next question, how do we know we've got it? How do we know that our space is psychologically safe? So all of this is so key, because if we don't consciously think about that and put it into action, there are people in our schools who are not going to feel psychologically safe, and they're not going to learn. We're putting brakes on their learning. So that psychologically safe space goes for everyone. And I think I might have mentioned in one of the other chats we've had online, but Kimberly Cooper, one of our advocates, said Learning Pioneers is the most psychologically safe space she knows. And that, like, when something like that really lands, and you're like, yeah, we've really intentionally made that. So that feels really great, So that conversation about psychological safety, really powerful. So next question, what impact has Learning Pioneers had on your whole school team and culture for learning? So I'm just going to kind of backtrack a little on this, in terms of Sandringham has a really incredible structure for teacher learning that would be really good to hear a little bit about, so other schools listening can think about, what does that look like and how can we set that up? And then, as we've been working together these 2 years, we've been working and dovetailing and thinking about how tailoring how Learning Pioneers can fit with your professional learning and enhance it and complement it. So could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I suppose in the first instance, thinking as a school, we talk very much about the person that's best placed to improve yourself as a learner is yourself, and to improve yourself as a teacher is yourself. So making sure, if we're doing that, we need to give teachers agency. And teachers, I mean, I use that term as everyone, any member of staff within Sandringham is thought about as a teacher. We're all there to support the children, and that happens best the closest it is to the classroom. So those are two things that we hold ourselves to account on. Learning Pioneers, that's a place where we have members of leadership within leadership masterminds, And that's about really making sure that we are also taking that time to be learners, because you can lead a school, but if you're trying to lead a school and not taking time to learn yourself and develop yourself, how can you support others to do that, and how can you model that? So Learning Pioneers has a huge impact on us in that way. And then just thinking about what we're doing as a community in the school, it's, we want to give our staff agency over their learning. And one way is about having members of staff being part of the community. And there's different levels. We've got teachers in Teachers Mastermind. We've got members of support staff who are within the community and within the book studies. And lesson study is a huge part of our professional learning as well. And with that, that's about groups of teachers who have given time to look at research, because that's really important. That's one of our values about looking at the research, but also being agile to change, taking those risks as well. And you can't take those risks if you don't feel supported and safe. So we as leadership have to make sure that we're creating that safe environment. We talk about one team, Sandringham, we've got just between 150 and 170 staff. It's a big team, and we need to make sure that we're all having opportunities and being part of that. So that lesson study it's given a lot of time, and we commit a lot of time to that, where teachers are having the opportunity, as I said, to read the research. They're then looking at their question that they're developing and what they're going to actually plan for that lesson. And within that lesson, making sure they've planned it together. It's not about one teacher teaching and everyone else watching them. They own that lesson together, and they've decided what it is they're looking for in that lesson. And it's important that people see that as they've got the agency over it, but they've also got that shared responsibility to take that pressure off. There is nerves about lesson study. I wouldn't say everyone really enjoys it, but they enjoy the opportunity to have a chance to take risks, to try something different. I know Bimla talks, and I think she spoke to you, Becky, about that. We can only see if something's going to work within the classroom if we try it and we give it a chance. But we can also then have time to reflect. So post-lesson discussions are so important. So we plan that in as well, because if teachers don't reflect back on what did work well and what's not working for the children, all children are different, and the children, each cohort's different, but we need to reflect on those specific children, and then to look at, well, what next for them as well. With Learning Pioneers as well, just thinking about book studies, if we're saying that we're research driven, we need to provide time for all staff to have time to look at books, but to look at it together. It's not just about reading it and saying, oh, that was interesting, but having time to discuss it, and then having time to try things out within everyone's area. That may be within a classroom, that might be out in the playground for midday supervisors, any of those, whichever area you're working in, trying things out, and then having a group of who you feel supported by, and you feel you can share the challenges. Some things don't go right. Some things can fall apart in that way and fail, but it's not a failure on that part. It's a chance to try again. It's a chance to reflect. So that's how we drive Sandringham forward. And I would say Learning Pioneers gives us that opportunity and supports us. Our conversations with you, Becky, as leaders, you're always open there to let us talk through grapples. We talk in our learning about children having time to grapple. We are learners as well, and Sandringham staff grapple with things, and we look to how we can improve it. It's not about, stop it and do something completely different. It's about refining, tweaking, and improving it for the learners.
Love all of that. You just got a thumbs up in the chat from Gina Bale. So we'd love to know, Gina, what thumbs up. It's probably the whole thing, but like what stood out to you particularly. All of that speaks so much to how intentional you are at Sandringham and how inclusive you are. So one thing that I've really loved kind of working with you on, well, apart from everything, but is how intentional you are with what could be potentially more vulnerable groups, those groups that are perhaps new to the profession or haven't had as much experience or haven't had teacher training in the way that some of us might have. So one thing I particularly loved was when we had Mark Finnis and Robert Lowe in to explore how to deepen and strengthen those relationships, which is one of those lines of inquiry we always come back to, and everybody says that, you know, without relationships we have nothing, you know, and that has been intentionally looking at that has been the thing that's made the biggest difference to my practice. But you took that a step further and you took the book study to your lunchtime staff, made time for them to discuss, like nurtured them, made it important, made it front and center, and therefore gave them that opportunity to have those discussions and unpick those kind of, you know, those grapples, because it can be so challenging. Lunchtime especially is such a challenging time to, you know, you've got so many children that need to have their lunch, need to get out to the playground, you know, that's where all the stuff comes out, you know. So I really respect and love how intentional you are, and particularly for those groups that might sometimes get forgotten, and you just make sure they're the ones that get the most love and the most kind of attention. So Gina's saying thumbs up for everything, and the reflection, and all children and teams are unique. Yeah, 100%. So it's that intentionality and thinking about, like you said, Louise, what does this mean for Sandringham, you know, and why, where's the need, and where can we nurture, and where can we support and challenge? It's all of those things together. And that's why people stay for 20 years.
Yeah.
Because when you feel that sense of belonging, and you feel like you're valued, why would you want to leave? And when you are on a continual lifelong learning journey yourself and with your school, that's continually challenging and engaging, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the same. I suppose that's the thing. It's not about, oh, it's easy and doing the same, but it's exciting, and every day is exciting. And that community is so important. Now, what you were saying there, Becky, about, you know, midday supervisors, it's probably one of the most challenging roles, because you come in the middle of a day, you take a time that's really pressured. But if we don't put that time into it, you know, the children's day isn't just about the times in the classroom. The children's day is from the moment they walk in off our street to the moment they walk out past that, but then what they do when they go home. So, you know, working with parents, but it's just so important, because that lunchtime needs to be successful. To be a successful learner, you need to feel safe and you need to feel cared for. And that's why we said, if we're talking about one team, we have to live that out of what does one team mean. That's every single member of staff that is part of the community.
And you take it beyond that as well. So just to kind of share as well, another thing that was really exciting this year was what you developed kind of within your team and through the masterminds. I think you brought this. I think you brought this to the hot seat in the masterminds, was thinking about communication with parents, and that thing when children go home and parents say, "How was your day?" and they're like, "It was all right," you know, and how to expand that into a learning conversation. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know you came up with some kind of creative and interesting ideas to give parents the structure to be able to have that learning conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an ongoing piece of work that we'll continue. So it's about, you know, really thinking about what are the right questions to be asking to get children talking. And also just thinking about when's the right time as well. You know, as you're walking home from school, children are tired, a bit hungry, that might not be the time to bombard, but how to create a conversation. You know, we talk about, it's not just about the questions, but it's about how you develop that conversation. So giving prompts to parents. So there's been workshops within school for that, but also that idea of the we work with Maslaha, which is a charity that works with us to support parents that are harder to reach in that way, and in terms of supporting us with language for our parents as well, because we've got many staff that speak multiple languages, but they support us with that. And with those, we're looking at it's creating like question prompts and ideas that can be up on the fridge, the back of a phone case as well, those ideas to just really support our families, but to say this is important, and you're important to your child's learning. We don't want anyone that said, you know, that we believe in the children and we believe that they can be successful, but we value the parents as the first educators of the children from early years right through their time at Sandringham. But we want to support you to support your children in this as well.
Yeah, I love it. Like, yeah. So again, so intentional. And I think when we were kind of sharing with the hot seat in the in the masterminds. And just to kind of, for everyone who's watching, like the hot seats are a part of the mastermind where someone can bring a grapple or something they're developing, and we can all problem solve that together and kind of ask questions to get to provoke thinking further, and also add ideas and share thinking. So it's like about 15 to 20 minutes. By the end of that 20 minutes, you have a bank of ideas to go away and develop, or some different ways to think. And I remember you talking about the kind of fridge magnet idea and thinking, oh, that's genius, because it's just there. And it's all like the fridge is like a central place of the household where, and you tend to have lots of things on there that can stimulate learning or a kind of happy memories. And why not have those prompts? And I love that idea of having it on the back of your phone as well, because I can just imagine parents in the supermarket or something, just you're doing your shopping and then you look at the back of your phone. Oh yeah, those questions okay, final question. And Gina, thank you for coming. Thank you. You can watch back on the last few minutes and we'd love to hear more of your takeaways. So the final question is, you've kind of touched on this, but what are you looking forward to most about next academic year in Learning Pioneers?
I would say just continuing to be part of that community. The speakers you've shared, obviously the lineup for next year. And again, that's really exciting. We start September. We've kind of now, I think now this is something that it was new last year, Becky, when you were our keynote speaker for our conference, but we've made a link with the local University of East London, which is only a mile down the road from us. And we're now starting the 1st of September with every conference. And we've got Mark Finnis for all of our staff on the 1st of September. And again, that's because of Pioneers, that you've put us in touch with him. And he has, his work on those relationships has made such a difference to us at Sandringham. It's always been something that's important to us, but I suppose in looking at the book study and looking at the book of restorative practice it's made us question. It's made us think about, why do we do things this way and what's important? So that start of the year. But although that's something for Sandringham, it's come as a result of Learning Pioneers. And Pioneers, I'm looking forward to more staff being part of it. We are looking at our ECTs and our ECTs +1 of just really ensuring that they really understand the learning power approach. So getting them part of the studies, and those will really support us to develop our CPL for our different groups of staff, being able to just to drip in bits across the year and support them. Because for us, learning power approach, it's not a bolt on, it's immersed, it's integral to what we do. For that, Learning Pioneers is really supporting us with that, to support all of our staff to understand what Sandringham is about.
And just that we have, we're wrapping things up now. We haven't really got a chance to go fully into the learning power approach and how it runs through all of Learning Pioneers. And that's really how our link began, because like you mentioned, Robert's co-authored the Powering Up Your School with Guy, and I co-authored Powering Up Children. So there's that kind of link of that real understanding of, and like you said, embeddedness isn't a word, but the desire to embed the learning power approach as integral to everything, as the kind of the philosophy that runs through all of the learning in school. And that's something that you were talking about, polishing the pebble. You've really been polishing at Sandringham, and still it's awesome that you see the need for those new teachers coming in to really kind of engage with that and have the support to do that. And the course that they're going to be part of, the Learning Power Approach course with Guy, that's the thinking behind it. It's called an Introduction to the Learning Power Approach. It actually goes quite deep. It's got a lot of provocations from Guy, tools to use, practical ideas from me with the book study. So by the end of that course, you've got a really good grasp of the LPA, plus all the interactions with myself and the kind of advocates we have feeding back within that course. So that will really boost that kind of, it will be kind of like moving from, I know a bit about the LPA and I can kind of see how it works, and I see how it works in other people's classrooms, to like, oh no, I really get this and I really want to drive it forwards, and that supports what you're already doing. It drives that from the ground up. So that wraps things up. Thank you so much for your time, Louise, especially on your last day of term. Go and have a really, really nice holiday. And I'll really look forward to connecting with you when we circle back in the masterminds and with all our learning next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky, for all your support.
Pleasure. Bye-bye. Bye.